that have come out from his program over the last few weeks. Well, let's shift our focus to something very, very different, something very uplifting, I would have to say, in stark contrast to what we were just talking about with Inshan Ishmael. Because can you imagine not being able to read at the age of 14? Well, our next guest lived that experience, but also overcame that obstacle with the help of parents, friends, and one teacher who believed in her. She went on to become a teacher, a lawyer, based in London, and has now authored a book telling of her experiences. We're joined on the set by author Michaelle James to tell us more. A very good morning to you. Good to have you here on the program with us. By the way, the book is I'm Thinking by Michaelle James, and we might have a look at that publication in a short while to give you a sense as to what it's all about. There it is. I'm Thinking was completed in 2013. First of all, tell us a bit about, before we talk about the book itself, that transformation from someone at the age of 14, such an influential, vulnerable age as a teenager, to be unable to read, to be an author, a lawyer, a barrister at law, and to be a teacher, and so much else that you have achieved. What would have facilitated that transformation?
Okay, at age 14, I think the onus was upon me. It was a very powerful thing when I decided that I wanted to do better. I wanted to read. It took me to make that decision. And having done so, I had the assistance of my parents, my younger siblings, and so forth. I was cut off mainstream education because I failed common entrance twice. Yeah. But my mother came from a background, she could not read either, because in those days, the background she came from, the children, only the boys were allowed to go to school. Yeah. So though she wanted to teach me, she couldn't. But however, despite what the teachers said, she continued to beg for a place for me in secondary school. And this one teacher who I said believed in me is that teacher who, after 2 years of begging and beseeching, I was able to get into secondary school.
How did you function? How did you manage? Because if you were having problems reading, to actually be in a secondary school environment, you mentioned to me before we came on here, you're originally from the Indian Trail area in Couva, then you were based for a long time in Peterborough in the San Juan area, but you now make your home in London. How did you manage, how did you even function in an environment where you were struggling to read?
Well, first of all, it's a very, I was ashamed, very much ashamed of not being able to read and being taunted about who I was and what I can do in primary school. I went to secondary school trying not to allow my new group to have any sort of insight to the fact that I could not read. Now, in those days, we did not have a lot of books at school. It was 10 of us, and at home, sorry. But there's one book, the history book. And by the way, because I was age 14, I was not put in Form 1, I was put in Form 2. So you can imagine you had no foundation. But there's this book, the West Indian history book. That book became a Bible under my arm. There's simple words in there that I learned to decode by the help of Miss Mason James, that one teacher. And then also I had my other siblings that, although they were younger than me, they could have read. And the thing about it, we had a very loving home. And although it is the case that I was the only one who could not read, it didn't matter. My mom and dad never treated me differently.
Could I ask, I mean, and I don't want to make it seem I'm delving into your personal life, but if you talk about a loving family, a supportive parents and so on, how did you get that you couldn't read at the age of 14?
Good. I was born a premature baby, very ill. I was not expected to live. And so I was kept home for a long while because of fear that I would contract some sort of virus which would have been fatal. And so at the point in time when I entered school, unlike my other siblings, I had no background at all. But having said that, there was a strong attachment to my mother, something I couldn't understand. I missed my mother dearly. I don't know, it could be because of the years I spent with her and my dad alone at home. And I think I wasn't understood by the teachers, really. I think they thought, you know, it's just a miserable little girl who don't want to stay in the school. And it became a dark place to me. I just went through school, really, and I was left alone.
Let's talk, unfortunately, because we'd really like to have more time to talk about so many other things. But let's talk about the book. What can people get for? It's available in all the major bookstores.
Right?
It's been launched here in Trinidad and Tobago. What is the book about? And it's entitled "I'm Thinking." What's it about?
Right. The book chronicles my experiences as a child who could not read from age 14, right up to my achievement as a barrister of law in England and Wales.
What are you hoping people get from it, from that experience? Because there's always a purpose to anything we do.
Yeah, I'm hoping that whosoever read this book, they can be confident about the fact that they can go, irrespective of where you are. It's not where you are, it's where you are going and the strategies that you are willing to put in place to get to where you want to go. And all through their motivational pieces that depicts that same thought.
Is there a website as well where people can get more information on the book?
Yes, there's a website, michaellejames.com.
And it's interesting your name, and I was asking you about this. So it's Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. L-E-E, Michael Lee. And I was asking you if your parents wanted a boy named Michael.
Yes.
And a girl turned up.
They wanted a boy. They had two girls before, and my dad was wanting a boy. And they had already named the child. They felt that they were going to get a boy, and they named him Michael.
And turned up prematurely as well.
Yes. So when I came about, I suppose they didn't want to let go of the Michael, so they just put Lee, Michael Lee.
Was there any stigma attached to that? Were there any feelings of regret that maybe your parents unconsciously made you aware that they really didn't want they wanted a boy instead?
Well, you know what? Once I arrived, I mean, I don't think so, because it's the love and the warmth that I felt. Okay, they may have wanted a boy, but when I arrived, I feel the love, yeah. And then my father himself, at the point in time when I was born, he lost his job.
Okay.
So he stayed home and took care of me. So there's a strong bond.
So that very strong was very, and I'm sure a lot of that will come out in the book as well. But very quickly, you were telling me as well that you've been working as well with Alta. And you found it to be a very emotional experience, working with people who are almost your age but are struggling to cope with literacy. What has that been like to be involved with some of the Alta classes?
It's been very moving. It's been very moving in the sense that when I look at some of these people in the group, you have different age groups. And a lot of them would have come from the system that I came from, the written off system.
Yes.
And I feel really, really good to be able to say to them, look, I understand what you are going through. I've walked the walk, and you know, I just love them. I intend to support as much as I possibly could.
That's tremendous. So you're walking the walk, you're talking the talk, and you're writing the write as well, Michael Lee James. The book is "I'm Thinking." It's available to all of the major bookstores in Trinidad and Tobago. And again, you can get more information at the website, and the website is once more
www.michaelleejames.com.
www.michaelleejames.com. A truly inspirational story of someone who's transformed her life and indeed is achieving all that she wants to achieve when at some time she might have been written off so many years ago. We're not writing off this program as yet. We'll be back right after this.